All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar, a chapter development update. We realize that since we're not having an in-person chapter administrators training this year until we get to CLC later, we wanted to make sure that we're taking a moment to touch base with all of you and to let you know about some of the kind of changes, updates, and make sure that we're kind of doing a recalibration to get all of us on the same page. So hopefully you all know who I am by now. I'm DJ Johnson. I'm the Director of Chapter Program Development here at ASID. I think I've been here for 1 year now and 2 weeks, but who's counting? And I've been working for associations over the last 12 years or so. This is my 5th association with a specific focus on kind of helping to support and in some cases to find ways to do things more efficiently and differently around volunteer and chapter relations. I've really enjoyed getting to know chapters and getting to know you guys over the last year or so, and now after having some time to really kind of observe, you guys will notice that this year we're definitely going to be moving into kind of some different strategies that I'll be going into a little bit later about how we can be more supportive and kind of more engaging with the things that our chapters are doing. And then by now you all should have interacted with my colleague Jessica Irizarry. And there is a picture, since I know many of you have interacted virtually via email and phone, but you might not have gotten a chance to meet her in person, but you will get a chance to meet with her in person when you're at CLC in July of next year. But I just wanted to really point out to remember that Jessica really is your first point of contact. She manages the chapters at asid.org mailbox. And also, she is the main manager for a number of major projects that are impacting you guys right now, including the email transition project, the contract review process, general database support as long as it doesn't involve something that goes deeper into programming, as well as the overall chapter elections. And, you know, I have to say that I'm really inspired every day by just how much thought and work Jessica does put in and how important chapters are to her. So I really hope that you all, you know, will reach out to her, you know, when you need. She is definitely here for your support. Now, going into some of the first major changes about, you know, kind of our chapter development programs, we are, you know, kind of switching stream and making sure that we want to create a better alignment between the messages that we are communicating with the boards that you support and with you guys. And so that's one of the reasons why in 2016 we will actually be combining what we're calling the Chapter Administrator Forum going forward, because we realize that this isn't really a training for many of you, especially those of you who have been in the positions for a long time. We really want to use this as an opportunity to have a forum both for you guys to connect with the incoming leaders that you will be supporting and managing, you know, for the coming year, as well as, you know, a chance for you guys to connect with the national messaging strategic plan and also with national staff, so that we can kind of start the year out strong. So this year that will be held in Minneapolis in July, July 14th through the 16th. We will be sending out more information closer to the beginning of the year, hopefully after you all are through your chapter elections and have identified the people who would be coming to CLC. I am going to ask that you hold off on making your travel reservations just yet, because there are some things about the timing of the meeting that are still being determined and in flux, especially in relation to when during the meeting celebration will be scheduled. So, but in the meantime, know that we do have things blocked out for those dates, the 14th through the 16th, but don't make your travel arrangements yet, because there will be a different start time for you all than there will be for chapter officers, because there are some things that we want to make sure that we have time to go in depth with you guys before or potentially after, depending on what the timing is, the officers are there that are more specific to you guys, and also the same for them. And then President's Forum, hopefully you all did get the Save the Date email that went out earlier this week. If not, you can reach out to us. It definitely went to all of your new email boxes, so if you haven't gotten it, make sure that you check there first, but that is going to come up. It's actually the weekend right after New Year's in Los Angeles, and we did include all the basic information in the email that was sent out earlier this week so that presidents can begin making their hotel reservations and their overall travel arrangements. Now, so in 2016, you all will be a part of CLC. I know that this is something that many of you were asking for when I first started a year and 2 weeks ago, and it is something that I completely agree that it is important that we're all acting as a team and that we're all realizing the importance that that we all play, whether that is you all as the main chapter staff, as well as the chapter board committees and general membership, and even those of us here at the national office in terms of all working together. So what we're going to be going through today in terms of the agenda is I want to do a recalibration and review about the overall kind of job description and some of the resources that we have in handbook for you all as the main chapter staff. And there are some important operational reminders that typically we've given during the formerly administrators training, now the administrators forum that's been held in the past in November, that I just want to, we've been seeing this come up with some of these things come up with a number of chapters, so I wanted to make sure to give you guys a reminder and a recalibration of these things, as well as some updates on some kind of long-term ASID projects and programs, and then to offer you guys a chance to ask questions and to have a little bit of a discussion offline about the evolution of ASID in general and kind of our chapter program. So now, first off, the thing that I want to go into is there is an updated job description and guide. It was actually sent out not too long after I started last year. It was in the fall of 2014, so the beginning of the 2015 fiscal year that this was sent out. And the way that this was put together is it was put together from chapter president feedback that was gathered at the 2014 chapter leadership conference, and that was mapped against operational opportunities and things that had really challenged the chapters over the last couple of years, and then we communicated it out. Now, the reason why this updated kind of description and guide was put together is because just like the profession and ASID as a whole, your job has undergone an evolution, just as the organization is undergoing an evolution. And the reason why I put this slide up about the history of ASID is because it's important to remember that, we have been an organization that, throughout our history has gone through a lot of change, even from like the merger of our original founding organizations, the American Interior Decorators and the National Society of Interior Design. Now, and the reason why I put this out there is to show that I know it's easy to get kind of comfortable sometimes in how chapters may have operated or even what the organization was in the beginning, but to remember that, through the course of our 40-year history, we've always been going through change. And some of the research and information that we've been sharing with your boards and with our general membership that's coming out of our research about, what are some of the things that have kind of led and kind of required us to change really is, the things that we've seen about the perception of interior design. Obviously the mission of our organization is to communicate the impact of interior design and to really show both, our members and our vendors and consumers and the public that what designers do really does have a difference and that it really does impact lives. And, some of the main obstacles that we all face and that you all have probably seen in chapters is that, a lot of people still feel that the public thinks that it's really only, the rich that are focusing on design, or that it's only more of a residential thing, without really thinking about kind of the other markets that designers are working in and that our members do make a part of. And that in general, people don't understand the role of interior design. From seeing things on HD television and reality shows where they think that design is just an easy kind of thing that anyone can do really if they put their mind to it. And also people are really unsure about kind of like the process of what interior designers do, how they can work with interior designers, and so on. So the reason why we bring this up is you're going to notice that as an organization, we're having more focus and support on research because we want to actually give people kind of the metrics and to show really, kind of beyond just the ideas and the hypotheticals, to actually have kind of practical examples and discussions about the impact that designers are having. And this really relates to a number of you saw during our 40th anniversary that we really had adopted the tagline of 40 years, one voice. And actually on Monday, you guys are going to see the kind of next evolution where we're talking about kind of one voice along with some of our government affairs kind of efforts, that really the focus of ASID is to show people that we're bringing designers from all across all the different spectrums that have a lot of different specialties, and even people from, kind of who aren't designers but who work within the design sphere to come together with with a strong voice and with strong positions to really show people the impact of design. And that's something that we've been bringing up at every single chapter leadership development training that we've been doing, and it's something that even beyond our 40th anniversary going on that you're going to see us kind of tying everything into, and some of the messages that we're going to go into a little bit later. Now, jumping back into kind of the main summary of the chapter administrator guide, and we will be sending this out to you all again so that you guys have a copy of this, as well as some of the other kind of resource documents around Brand Central and around the new email system. We want to send these out to you guys all in one email to kind of start out your year so that you have all of them in one easy place. But I wanted to kind of go high level over some of the main tenets of what is in the updated job description, because I know that sometimes there's a lot of angst because, we can be frank, a lot of board members and a lot of members frankly don't understand what you guys do, and they don't understand in some cases the importance as well as the time, the effort, and the energy that you all are really putting into this. And I want you to know that Jessica and I do understand that. Being association professionals, we understand that, on paper, when you look at what a job is of supporting an association compared to what it actually is in reality, can be completely two different things. So one of the things that I'm really advocating you all to do is to use the administrator guide not just as a tool to remind you guys about kind of what are the basic core competencies of what the job has evolved into, but you can also use it to educate your board members and other leaders about what it is that you are doing, what is the expertise and all the skills that you are bringing to the table in order to help the chapter be successful, so that they can look at what you do in a different way. I know that, in some cases, people feel that, the title of the position can be limiting, and I've definitely been in, kind of association positions where I look at the title versus kind of what I do, and it can be really difficult to find a title that, accurately describes. And that's why it's really important to actually go back to kind of the description and what it is in your job that you do, to show people all the different things and all the different areas that you touch. So, going to the slide that you have in front of you, the three main areas that kind of this guide touches on is the fact that, first and foremost, as you all understand, you are support to the chapter board of directors. That's who you report to. It's the direct people that you work for, although remembering that all chapters are an extension of the National Society. You guys are all serving as that central point of contact, and that you really have the key role in customer service as well as in recruitment and retention. Now, this is a quote that comes directly out of the guide that I think it is really important, and that as you educate, especially your new board members, about the role it is that you do, and the fact that you are critically important to the operations of the chapter. And also really focusing in on that this position does come with professional expectations, which we're going to go into on the next slide, and some core competencies that are really essential to ensure a chapter success. Now, these are the core competencies that went into the updated and revised job description that, as I mentioned, was based on both feedback from chapter presidents about the areas that they felt that their chapters were struggling with or had had some challenges, as well as some opportunities that were then mapped back against the society's strategic plan, which is, the strategic plan for the entire society, which includes the chapters. So, just kind of going down through these in order, the main core competencies that, it is important and that all administrators, will be graded against, kind of along with whatever the more specific description that was created by your chapter boards are these main 7 areas. First, strategic plan implementation. And what this really means is just making sure that you have a understanding of your chapters, kind of the tactics that they have come up with to support the National Strategic Plan, and that you can work through with them how to kind of both navigate that and implement those tactics. You guys have a large part in representation, which really relates to customer service. And the representation, it's a general word, but it's really about how you are balancing all of these different roles. You've got both kind of inward clients in terms of, your chapter board, your committees, and so on, that you are having to represent where you are really the face, in some cases, of ASID to them, as well as to the general members, to different vendors or other organizations that your chapter might be working with or entering into contracts with, and really making sure that with everything that you do that you are representing both ASID, the chapter, and yourself in the best way possible. And anyone who works in association understands that we've all got those great members that it's always a joy to hear from and to work with. And then we've got those other members that sometimes make our days a little bit more exciting. And sometimes those members may actually be members of your board. But it's really important to remember that just like I hope that you all have seen how Jessica and I mirror this behavior of trying to give you all, the utmost highest customer service and professionalism that we can, that, that's similar to kind of the role that you guys are playing in terms of your representation. Now, financial management, I do know that that varies per chapter, that some of you have really engaged directors of finance on your board, and I know that some of your chapters are using or outsourcing to accounting firms and so on, some of the more kind of direct day-to-day financial kind of reporting or management. But it is something that came up repeatedly with a number of the presidents, that financial management of having an overall kind of understanding to help kind of manage and monitor, or in some cases just to make the chapter aware or the board and leadership aware of when there could be some issues or some obstacles, to make them aware of that. And that really is a part of, kind of overall association management. It's something that it's not necessarily like having to do all the calculations, but having enough of an understanding so that if there's an issue or an opportunity, to raise the red flag or to kind of direct your leadership to think about this as an opportunity. Public relations, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You guys are, as being the first point and the main point of contact, you really are the face and the people who sometimes get reached out to first. Into member recruitment and retention, this really means that it's important to have a general understanding of how to navigate and find things in the database, how to understand and explain the general reports that are sent out, which also, by the way, you all have any of the reports that we send you all have the ability to go into the database and pull yourselves if ever you needed it outside of a time when they're normally generated, and that's something that Jessica and other people on staff could definitely work with you on. And also, just general inquiries. It's important that we all know what are all the different membership categories, what are the different pricing structures, what are the different requirements that it takes to be a member, because it doesn't reflect really well on us as an organization if we get asked those kinds of basic questions and we can't really answer them. And then you are helping with the communications, including the different programs as well as kind of the relationships with other organizations, contracts, helping us kind of monitor and aid in the review by legal counsel so that you can make sure that your chapter's leadership and officers are protected as long as they're making reasonable business decisions, and then just the overall support, the daily management, the boards, the members, and any committees and task forces. And the thing that I put out there is I know that there's always this kind of question, especially around kind of performance evaluations, and also as you've seen some transitions, both on whether it's on like the national level or within other chapters or so on. What is it that people, what is it that helps kind of people be effective? And really focusing on these things, because it's really important to remember that we're all held accountable kind of for our job descriptions and what it really takes for our jobs to be effective. That's held true for myself and Jessica and other people on the national staff. I know some of you guys have also seen where your boards may have removed a board member or members because they were being held accountable. And the same is true for you all and your role as well. So the biggest advice that I always give is just, focusing in on this in terms of the job description, the goals that are kind of set within your chapters, kind of the tactics that help support the society's strategic plan, and focusing in on these core competencies, which, and I will say that the guidebook does go into a lot more detail about each of these areas. I was just trying to give a kind of a quick summary, but this really is the focus. And if you're looking at this list and you think, well, I've got 3 out of the 7, or I've got, 4, always feel free to reach out to us, because we do have, webinars and recordings of webinars online, and we're always looking for ideas about what are some of the upcoming webinars, topics for upcoming webinars to help support you, to help get your competency strong in each of these areas. And just in terms of talking about the guide, there are a number of other things in there as well. As I brought up all of our membership categories and pricing, there's an explanation of the different reports that can be pulled and that come out. There's guidelines around what to do and what not to do when sending out communications. Like, for example, members do indicate when they don't want you to communicate with them. That's something that actually shows up on your membership roster, and it is something that's in the database. So as a really easy example, we shouldn't be communicating with people who have asked us not to communicate with them. So I really hope that you all will take some time when we resend out the guidebook, if you haven't, to kind of go through that. And I think it's also good to have a discussion in some cases with your chapter presidents, because we will be reminding them, about the guidebook, which was sent to them last year and which was also reviewed with some of them at CLC as well, to kind of remind them that, this is kind of something that that previous chapter presidents had helped us come up with about it's what helps a chapter be successful. Now, there are a couple of kind of operational reminders and important structural requirements that I want to go into, and whenever I have to talk about this with chapter officers, one of the first things that I point out is that a number of the stuff that I'm going to go out, these are not necessarily nationals requirements. Some of them are not. These are actually some of the legal requirements that are in kind of the U.S. tax code that it takes to be a nonprofit. So with a lot of these things, and even some of the things that are in our bylaws, often when I have to have a discussion with a chapter about, making sure that these are being upheld, I get some pushback where someone says, well, why are you making us do this? This is so difficult. And I say, just like, everyone has to pay the tax man, this isn't me saying that you have to do this. This is me saying that we have to do this legally And if we don't, sometimes there could be consequences, and that's really what I'm trying to protect the society and you all, as the chapter staff and your chapters against, to just make sure that we're doing all the stuff that we have to do to maintain our tax-exempt status. So, this relates to, first going back to our overall legal structure. So we are a 501c6. That means that we are a nonprofit organization or a mission-driven organization where the government gives us, some different kinds of tax breaks and a different kind of tax classification because we say that all money that comes into this organization is going to be directed into a specific mission that is a cause kind of for the greater good. Now, as a national organization, we are incorporated. We do have articles of incorporation, and in order to be incorporated as a nonprofit, you have to have bylaws and you have to have certain requirements. Chapters are not incorporated. So again, I repeat, chapters are not incorporated. So in order for you guys receive your status basically as kind of a subsidiary of us in the national organization. So we are incorporated, we have a tax-exempt status because we have bylaws and other things that nonprofits are required to have. And that's one of the reasons why, our bylaws and our policies are the bylaws and policies of the entire society. Now, you all have some different kinds of operational procedures that we'll go into a little bit differently, but I know that there's been some confusion where some chapters have been calling their operational policies their bylaws, and that's a slight course correction that you can help them make to kind of explain, well, look, we're actually not incorporated. National's incorporated. We get a lot of our legal protections and a lot of our insurance protections by our connection through them. That's one of the reasons why, we have to follow their bylaws and their policies, because if we're not following those bylaws and policies, it puts the tax-exempt status of the entire organization at risk. So now in order to maintain, kind of legal status of a chapter, which kind of relates to our overall nonprofit status, nonprofits are supposed to be, the will of the people, governed by the people. That's why we have a board instead of having just one person making all the decisions. So that's why you have to have a board. That's also why in order to make legal decisions, you have to have quorum. You also have to be filing your own tax returns as part of the chapter. And once again, since you are kind of governed by the people for the people in regards to kind of serving the membership, that's why each chapter has to have annual elections and why there is a process, even though I realize that our election process of typically having just one person in each candidate and then, they basically get elected unless the chapter members vote by, express their disapproval by voting no. I know some people say, well, that's not really an election, but it is because chapter members do have an opportunity to have an impact on who their leaders are, whether they take it or not. But that's something that has to be baked into the structure of, a nonprofit. And so just whenever you have to kind of explain this hierarchy to your board or even to other members who might not kind of understand why are we following these rules that it seems like that aren't those the bylaws of the organization, this is a really easy chart that you can use to kind of explain kind of like how we're structured. And I often use the local and federal government as a metaphor for this. It's kind of like when you think about, the Constitution and how that is kind of really what drives, all parts of our government. So we've got our overall governing documents, which are there in red, which are the bylaws and policies, as well as the strategic plan, which are basically the governing documents for the entire society. And while the strategic plan is updated by the board, the bylaws and policies can be updated by a vote of the entire ASID membership. But then underneath that, you have things that your chapter is in control of, that your boards are creating and having an input into that, but then that are kind of based upon the governing documents and that should not be in conflict with those national documents. And those are your chapter operational policies. So that's when your board is deciding, how many times the board typically meets throughout the year, or things like what do board members get reimbursed for, or what they do not get reimbursed for, the number of committees that you have, if you have any kind of long-standing recurring programs or projects like your different awards and so on. And often you'll see that those also appear in your chapter strategic plans as well. But I do have to reiterate, that's why it's really important, though, that they're not in conflict with the society bylaws or policies or strategic plan, because that then could have an impact on all of us in our overall nonprofit status. And having worked at 5 different organizations, I will say that I have seen instances where people have been taken to court, organizations have been taken to court by some of their members when they feel that there's something that has gone in violation of their bylaws, and they have sued, members have sued their own organization and won. Or sometimes where the government has come in when a question comes up around taxes or something else, and they start looking into minutes and bylaws, and if they see that everything isn't where it's supposed to be, where financial penalties or worse, the removal of the tax-exempt status has been kind of withdrawn from nonprofits. It is something that does happen, and it is something that Jessica and I work every day to avoid, and to hopefully be doing the things so that you guys don't have to be up at night worrying about this. That's kind of for us to do. So that's why it's also really important, and we brought this up with all of your board members that came to CLC. We're actually going to be sending out a quiz to them about ASID's bylaws, and we can send that out to you all as well, just to kind of reiterate and demonstrate the things that people know, and maybe the things that they thought that they knew and that they don't. I know that there have been previous members on national staff who have said, look, it is important to read the bylaws at least once a year, and I really do advise that. Or if ever you have a question, or you think, there's something about this program that just doesn't feel right that we're talking about, just go into the bylaws. They are listed electronically on our website under the About ASID section. That's where you can find it. And you can actually, if you're online, you can just do a word search and find around the words or programs that your chapter's thinking about. Because normally when you guys come to us with a question, that's the first thing that we do. And when there is an issue, that's when we get back to you and we say, well, this is where it's in conflict. And, kind of being more strategic and thoughtful about that kind of stuff, I really do think that you guys could help your chapters avoid, kind of some of those pitfalls. So, jumping back into those requirements and the governance, it is important, as we mentioned, that each chapter has to have a board. They have to be a quorum. But also, one of the things that's in the bylaws is that, since the bylaws and the policies of the society are the bylaws and policies of the entire society, that it is important that chapters support both in kind of their programs and in their actions those bylaws, and they don't go against those. And when they do, that's sometimes when there's issues where we kind of have to step in and navigate that. But then, it is also important that your chapter has and be creating operational guidelines about how they're going to get their work done. And that can help you avoid some of the conflicts about, if you have a new board member that comes in who says, well, shouldn't you be doing your job this way? Or shouldn't we be doing this project? If you have some operational guidelines that have been approved by your entire board, and that might be things like that also relate to the number of hours that you're working, or kind of how you're working with different committees, like really getting into kind of the nitty-gritty and the specifics about how work is getting done. That helps also protect you as well as the chapter against kind of a new person coming in and potentially not having an understanding and trying to change a lot of things. Because I know sometimes when you all come to Jessica or myself about an issue or a conflict, our first question is, well, does your chapter have any operational policies around that, and what is it? And then if you don't, once we've navigated through that, we really try and push to say, well, look, it's really important that your chapter creates policies around that. And if ever you're looking for a policy that maybe your chapter doesn't have, you can always reach out to us, and we can reach out to other chapters. We have a number of them on file. We actually should have all of them on file. That's one of the things that we're really focusing on in the next year. And we'd be happy to share some of the details of those, in some cases removing the identifying information, just to help you and your chapters kind of work through those kinds of things. Now, and I do want to point out, I know we're talking about your responsibilities. At CLC, we do reiterate to the board members that they have legal responsibilities and fiduciary responsibilities as well that they can be held liable for. And we emphasize a lot of these same things. They should have an understanding of the bylaws and the policies. And the metaphor that I always use there is like when people say, well, I didn't read them, I didn't understand them, and now that we're in a legal issue, shouldn't that count for something? What I always say to people is, well, have you ever gotten pulled over by a police officer because you were speeding, but you didn't know you were speeding? And does not knowing you were speeding get you out of the ticket or the legal consequences? So that's why it's really important that we all are kind of reiterating these same messages. So in terms of the responsibilities that all board members, not just the president, all board members are supposed to follow, they need to have an understanding of these governing documents that we've been talking about. They need to be making financial decisions that really understands that it is not the board's money, it is the members' money, and that they are kind of acting with care, loyalty, and also obedience. And what that basically means is that they are operating with care to really make sure that they are benefiting the members and the mission of the society. They have loyalty to follow the decisions of the society, whether that is staying compliant with the bylaws and the policies, whether that is compliant with agreeing and following any decision that the board makes when they have quorum in a meeting and going forward with that and not trying to sabotage or go against that, which relates to, kind of the duty of obedience, which is, once something has been set, people have to follow that. And I know, especially since this is the beginning of the year, you guys might be running into situations where you have newer board members or board members that maybe are more introverted, and they do have disagreements or concerns that they're not bringing up during the board meeting, and they might be bringing it up to you or to others, kind of starting like a whisper campaign outside the board meeting to potentially get decisions changed, and that is really kind of dangerous and detrimental to a chapter. Because, the whole purpose of having a board of many people is so that people can bring up disagreements and so that people can find the strongest possible course forward through consensus. So, one of the things that I've had to advise, different chapter staff is that when that does happen is, to really point out to a board member, I really wish that you had brought these concerns up at the meeting because that is what the board meeting is for. And to remember that, that's the reason why it's a multiple person board that's making the decision, not just one person. And, to really, advocate that people need to be doing that. They also need to have a basic understanding of the finances. They need to read the financial reports. They need to take interest in that, because if ever anything really negative was to happen with the finances where we were brought before a court of law, boards can be held liable, and one of the first questions that judges often ask is, well, what did the board, looking at what was in the reports, why didn't the board see that there was a problem? And then relating to that, since we know is also the ethics and overall professional conduct. We understand that, volunteering, people do it for many different reasons. Hopefully it's for the support of the profession and the mission of the organization, but there are also other benefits that people sometimes get out of it as well: increased visibility, increased contacts that can help them in their business. But really, we emphasize to everyone at CLC that when you are acting as a board member, part of the duty of loyalty is you are acting as a board member, you are not acting as an employee of, and that you should be making decisions that really are benefiting the chapter, and not for the purpose of just benefiting, your kind of personal business. And that's why there is a whistleblower policy, and this includes for you guys as well. If you feel like someone is being unethical, or in some cases, and especially if it's something around kind of the finances, you should reach out to us immediately, and you can do that here at the national office, and we have a review process. And that's also why we have a privacy policy to keep members' information secure and confidential. That's one of the reasons why we recommend using the database or using some kind of third-party system like Constant Contact to send emails out instead of having people send massive emails out from their personal email, because we do want to make sure to keep that information protected. Using the new chapter email system will also help with that, and that people should be identifying when they have conflicts of interest. So those are some of the responsibilities that all board members were briefed on, and that I led. It was basically like in an hour and a half, 2-hour session specifically with everyone in the room, where people even had to engage in exercises to talk about this. And if you happen to be in one of those chapters where, unfortunately a lot of people couldn't come to CLC, if you are running into those kinds of issues, I do have a version that I can do as a webinar that I've done with some boards where we've held like a live webinar so that I can interact with them in real time. Feel free to reach out to me, and I would be happy to set something up if you see that some of these issues are recurring, because this is the beginning of the year, and if they're coming up now is the time to really address them, to help your board really be successful and effective, and to help avoid kind of these kinds of situations building energy that really just ends up coming to a head before the year even ends. And the other thing that I want to bring up is, this is also why, the chapter elections, which hopefully your nominating committees are well on their way of getting together nominating slates. We did actually put in a requirement this year to all the nominating committees that as of December 1st, they're supposed to send you and the chapter boards a report letting them know, kind of what the slate is, and if they haven't put together a slate, just what how many people they've reached, some of the metrics of what has gone into their process. They don't have to go into the specifics about who they asked and who turned down, but they will have to explain, like how many people did they reach out to, which positions are still open, which ones are they struggling with, because keeping quorum is part of the legal responsibilities of us as a nonprofit. And the other thing that we've seen some chapters have difficulty with is remembering that we do have a staggered election process where basically it's close to half of the board is rotating off each year and then another half is rotating on, and it is supposed to be the same positions. So for example, for the 2016 elections that are happening, it should be the membership director, the director at large, and the president-elect are the positions that should be up for election. And then when we have the 2017 elections, during next fall, it will be the other positions. If you are out of cycle, that's okay. There's ways that we can fix that and get you back on track. But it is important that chapters follow that, because the way that Jessica and I design programming at CLC, based on kind of which groups do we go more into detail and which groups do we do more of an advanced training, is directly related on whether it is their first or second year. So it is something that does have an impact on the training that they get and the support that they receive. And then I do want to bring up, also just around quorum. I know sometimes, the unforeseen happens, and when everyone shows up, you're one person short of quorum. And remember, the president does not count for quorum because the president is not a voting member. So it just doesn't count in terms of quorum. But obviously, your meeting can still take place when there isn't quorum. And I know sometimes even there might be pressing needs where the board needs to come to a decision quickly, and it might be between a board meeting and there needs to be a discussion that happens. It's completely fine for the board to connect electronically. I know some of you even have a majority of your board meetings via conference call. Sometimes board members are discussing things via email. When when all of the board members are being copied on that, that can be fine in terms of getting some of the work done. But when it comes to making a legal decision, and something is not considered a legal decision for the chapter until quorum has officially approved a motion at a board meeting. So just if the board ever needs to come to a consensus on something where they're doing it outside of a board meeting, just make sure that at the next board meeting that it's on the agenda, and that as part of the first order of business, maybe after the minutes from the previous board meeting is approved or amended, that you are including in that official kind of decision, and making sure that people are voting so that you can vote officially who voted for or against a motion, so that's recorded, and that will make sure to kind of keep your chapter protected. Now, and this also relates to, as we talk about the legal side of things, I do want to remind everyone that, as I mentioned, as part of an incorporated nonprofit, the national organization does take out directors and officers insurance, which protects the officers, the board, kind of, and as well as yourselves as kind of employees of the chapter. If ever there was to be legal action or issues related to any kind of decision or action that a board had made. Now that is as long as it was a decision that had been approved and made by a quorum of the board that had been recorded in the minutes. If that happens, and as long as obviously it was a reasonable decision that followed the duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience that all board members kind of have to swear to when they take office, then as long as all that has happened, then our directors and officers insurance will protect you and will protect your officers. And we do have, overall general liability insurance as well. But as a part of this, this is one of the reasons why all business agreements that a chapter is making really should be formalized. Whether that is in a contract or in some cases in an email. So that can relate to if a place, if you have an IP or a location that has agreed to designate space for a for an event or for a meeting, to make sure that you have that in writing, because what happens if it is some kind of event and you are collecting money for people to attend that event, and then the person backs out, and then you have no legal recourse about the financial losses that your chapter would incur. So it really is important that all business agreements have to be formalized, and that when it comes to on a contract, please, please, please remember that the official name and the legal name of your chapter as an entity is always the, list the geographic name of your chapter of the American Society of Interior Designers. So it would not be, ASID New York Metro or, ASID Florida North, because actually when a contract is signed with ASID at the beginning, legally what that contract says is that the contract is with the national organization. It is not with the chapter. And then if ever something did happen and we had to go to our insurance company, it creates legal and insurance issues where it brings up the question, well, how is this signed? Well, we see that the approved person who signs for the society is not the person who signed this, so that invalidates all of your insurance or legal protections. And this is one of the reasons also why, between that and some of the other things, really why all contracts do have to come through the national office for us to send to our legal counsel to review, because there have been, even over the last year, some pretty sizable things that have come up, including there was one contract where if it had gone into litigation, and it was one that had been signed, and a chapter had not sent it to us to review because it had been signed previously, and they thought, well, it had been signed a couple years ago. Why do we really need to have this reviewed? And the way that it was written, and also because of the state and the legal environment of the state it was in, if we had gotten sued, they could have sued every single member of the organization. I'll repeat that again. They could have sued every single member. And you can imagine what that would have done for our PR and for our recruitment and retention rates if we had had to send out an email explaining that, even if it had only been $30 per person, spread out over 26,000 members, but that wouldn't have made someone feel really good to think, well, I, have to believe that we're protecting their best interest, and yet somehow we entered into an agreement that allowed them to be personally sued. So now, and I know that it looks like there might have been a question specifically about, is there a difference between a contract and kind of a letter of agreement, and that's a great question. A letter of agreement is a legal document, but it's something that is for probably more of a something that you might have agreed to more informally, like with a handshake, where there isn't necessarily any kind of exchange or I guess or a financial kind of requirement. So if someone was sending a letter of agreement to say, look, I'm giving you a letter that you can meet in my space, that's something that would not necessarily need to be reviewed, because it's different from, say, like a contract that says, okay, I'm giving you a contract to use this space, and as part of a contract, if any of your attendees knock over a painting or set something on fire, we have the right to sue your chapter for damages. Like, that's the kind of thing that needs to be, that's the kind of thing that would need to be reviewed by us. Anything that's going to have kind of an indemnity clause, anything that has essential terms, where basically it's saying we're letting you do this under these kinds of stipulations or requirements, and where you could have these consequences if these things are not met. Those are the kinds of things that need to be reviewed. And I know that there's a question also about, do contracts need to be reviewed by both national and local counsel? I will say that the difficult answer here is yes. That it should be reviewed by both, to make sure. If you do, first off, taking a step back, it is important and a best practice for all chapters to have local counsel. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's someone on retainer or someone that you reach out to all the time, but just someone so that if there is some kind of issue, the chapter does have someone that they can pick up the phone or email to go to for advice, even if you're just paying for that, like on a case-by-case basis. But the rule of thumb is that it's best that someone review it to make sure that there's not something that's putting your chapter at risk. And it is a requirement in the bylaws that technically all contracts are supposed to come through for review. I will say also, in terms of contracts, we are working with our legal counsel now to really work on getting some templates, which I know since I started was something that a number of you have told me that chapters have been asking for years. And it is something that we do want to help provide, and that we know can also help mitigate time and cost to have that. So we probably will not have templates for everything, and there are some businesses that obviously do not allow the use of templates. They always have to use their own contracts, but that is something that is in process, and that before the end of this fiscal year we should have some movement on to help make all of our lives and our jobs hopefully a lot easier. But so answering that initial question, the official word is that we should review all contracts. It should come through. We should definitely at least have it on file, so if something does come up, we can get through it really quickly. But we are working it is something that I am working with our legal counsel on in terms of saying, like, can we even get an idea on levels of review here? Like, there's got to be some contracts where it's more important than others, but their legal stance on things, because I just asked them this question this morning as I was preparing for this call, and the answer, the legal answer is that we should review everything, because if we were sued in court or something comes up, the first thing a judge is going to say is, well, they get their nonprofit status through national, and so how was this approved or signed in the first place? What was the process that you have in place? So, and just some really good rules of thumb when you're looking at these contracts to think about that can help you avoid some of these major pitfalls is, first off, make sure that it's the chapter of ASID, because we've also seen instances here where other organizations like that you're contracting with have changed it on the contract because they don't understand. They say, oh, we're with ASID, we're making this contract with ASID, so let's reverse it because that's what it is. Don't let them do that. Keep a lookout for that. There should never be a personal guarantee. So what that means is like a contract should never be made out to a person. It should never be so made out, it should be made out to the chapter, and then it should be signed by, Lisa Fitzpatrick, the president of the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan chapter of ASID. It's important that it's a contract that's being signed by the officer working in that role, and that it is not a contract where a person is held personally liable or has a personal guarantee. And in terms of liability, and this is where the contract that I was referencing before kind of got us in trouble, you should make sure that a contract doesn't have anything in it that is against someone personally, that is against all of the society and its members, which is what kind of happened in this other contract, or that it's against, kind of like the chapter members. And also sometimes there are indemnifications that things are put in, and that's one of the key great things that our legal counsel looks at and reviews. Those of you who've gone through the process numerous times have probably seen where Sarah Holland, our main legal counsel, has crossed things out or said, look, they have to remove this clause if we're going to move forward. The interesting thing about lawyers is if you ever go to a car rental, getting a car rental with a lawyer, you'll actually see them take the standard agreement and cross a bunch of things out on there, which I didn't know you could do. I didn't think you could do, but they do, and they still walk out with the car. So, and that's why it is important to have legal counsel review, because remember, as our legal counsel, they are looking at it in terms of the best interest for the society and kind of keeping us protected. Now, moving on quickly to just some of the updates on ASID projects before we get to the open question and answer period. I do want to bring this up. Jessica and I realized that this has probably made us some of the most unpopular staff members to you guys in regards to the chapter email project. It is something that we've been talking about for like the last year, and now the time has come to pull the trigger. And I really do want to emphasize that going back into some of these things that we were talking about before, about helping to make sure that there's a professional separation between when people are acting as officers on chapter business and when they're acting as private citizens or in the interest of their business, as well as hopefully creating a better sense of continuity so that information can be passed from one officer to their successor, and for them to have a record of that, and also for us to have the ability to, if suddenly someone disappears off the face of the earth, that you would still have the ability and we would still have the ability to kind of get in there and reassign access to someone else, and also so that we can make sure that it becomes easier for both chapter members, for outside vendors and contacts, as well as national staff to have one email address that they can always go to for someone who's acting in a certain role, even as that person changes. These are all the reasons why there's really kind of this push for the email system. And also we'll have a way to create a global address book so that whether you're looking up a national staff person or whether you want to look up, the chapter staff in another chapter or their finance director or someone to reach out to get some additional support, guidance, or to connect them with someone in your group, it will make it easier. And there are some chapters who were already doing this, operating with these kinds of accounts, like Florida South. To give them a shout out, they had already done this before we did it. So they were ahead of the curve, and now they're just having to shift over to use our system. And one of the things that Jeffrey Gillis had told me is that he said that it really did help their chapter in the long run. He said for the first year and a half, it was really difficult getting people to approach and look at things differently. But long term, it really was the right choice for the chapter to make. And if and as you are having struggles and issues kind of getting people to really convert over, something that I'd be interested in is actually getting some kind of maybe pointers from him about what are successes and maybe what are some pitfalls that his chapter had experienced when they went and made this transition 2 years ago. Now, Jessica is your main point of contact on that. You all did receive an email that listed all of your chapter email addresses, and that is also in your new email system, as well as kind of a guide about how to navigate that. And it is something that we want to provide more support to you guys in to help you navigate that better. I also do want to point out, hopefully all of your members are aware of this, but there is a CEU deadline. Every 2 years, members do have to have a specific number of credits, and that is coming up at the end of the year. So what is going to happen for people who haven't been through this process before is the closer you get to December, the more calls you are going to get from members who are either going to call about past chapter programs that they have taken that maybe they didn't keep the information that they needed to file in order to make sure to show that they're going to get the credit, or people are going to call and ask what programs does your chapter have coming between now and the end of the year, because they might realize that they are a couple credits short or so on, or they might call saying, look, I know that there's a requirement, but I just joined 2 months ago. Do I have to do this, or I joined at the beginning of last year? And you can kind of see up there that basically what the rule of thumb is that anyone who joined before May 31st of 2014 has the entire requirement. And then anyone who joined between May of 2015, so anyone who joined between May of last year and May of 2014 only has half of the requirement, so only 5 hours. And then anyone who joined from June 1st of this year to now, there's no requirement. They will not have a requirement until, but as of January 1, the new requirement will kick off so that by December 31st, 2018, they will need to have those 10 hours. And this is also a good point to kind of remind people that we did launch an online kind of what we're calling the ASID Academy, but it's basically just our online education platform where people can take CEUs that range between, I believe it's like between $15 and in some cases like $29 or I think $35 at the most. And one of the reasons why we tried to launch this now, closer to the end of the year, is because we realized that there are a number of members that haven't met the CEU requirement, that don't have a lot of time during the day, and they need to be able to do this on their own time, and that this would be a great option for that. So this is not to be a replacement of in-person chapter programming. Nothing could ever replace that, because there are some topics and things that are better for face-to-face interaction than they are, kind of online. But we really did put this up so that people would have another option to go to. And there is, a place on our website for the Academy. So as you start getting those frantic calls in December, or even leading up to December, of course, be promoting and selling your own chapter programs. But if that doesn't work for people's schedules, if, they say, well, I that's not really applicable to me, or I can't make it to that program, this is another place that you can point people out to help them meet that requirement by the end of the year. Because once it closes, we will be reaching out to people who didn't meet the requirement, and also, we will be doing audits as well, for a certain percentage of the people who have reported that they met the requirement, just to make sure that, for things that we didn't have on file from IDCEC, that they have the backup documentation for that. We are a professional society. This is a part of saying that we have, as a professional society, that we have a credential where people are keeping current on their knowledge. So it's an important part of our reputation, and to really show people that we are a relevant organization. Now, the other thing, just kind of since membership and recruitment was such a big part of those kind of core values, I did want to point out that, as part of the One Voice, that, we have expanded and are always kind of expanding kind of beyond what maybe people thought of our membership historically in the past, to making sure that we are penetrating the entire design market. And so as part of this, some of the people that you're going to see hopefully joining and that we've been kind of reaching out and increasing is we really are having more of a commercial presence, both in terms of name designers, small and mixed practice firms. That is, a large, kind of focus while still supporting our core membership as well. We are doing a lot more with students. That's one of the reasons why we've brought back the student conference that is going to happen at the end of February in Savannah at the Savannah School of Art and Design, SCAD. And we also are making sure to have more programs for our emerging professionals and mid-careerist, and especially looking at, some of the top 100, firms out there, because we really do feel that having an impact on design, that needs to be, kind of all areas, whether that's hospitality, whether that is health, whether that is, kind of healthcare, commercial, as well as making sure that we're still focusing on residential as well. And like our main focus for that, we're trying to diversify. We are trying to recalibrate the perception of ASID, where people in the past have looked at us as being focused on just one area, one specialty of design, and we're trying to get people who can help us amplify that message and leverage those connections. But I know when I visited some chapters, especially some of the chapters on the West Coast, I've had some members that will say, well, none of that is about me, none of that is about my business. And the answer that I always have for them is to say, well, we have to remember that ASID, in talking about the impact of design, focuses on the entire profession. And that while it might not be their focus, there are definitely other people in their chapter where that is their focus. And that we are trying to make sure that we are approaching all areas. It's not just that we're going to now focus on this new area and we're going to leave behind, where we have excelled and done really well in the past. That's not what One Voice means. What One Voice means is that we are pulling together all of these different experiences, expertise, perspectives, and then coming together and having a stronger voice as a whole, as an organization. And so I know that this has come up on some of your membership committees, so I really did want to bring up that we did, starting this year in 2015, we now from the national side have 13 touch points that we do for the renewal cycle. Now, if ever you get someone, especially someone on your board who says, well, it looks like I lapsed and I didn't get any of those, the first thing that would really help for you to do is to look them up in the database. All of the stuff that gets sent out is based off of the information that we have. If they have changed jobs, if they have moved, if they have changed their email address, and they haven't changed any of that or updated us in the database, they're not going to get any of this stuff. Now, if it is correct in the database and has been throughout kind of like the 3 to 4 month cycle when we've been kind of sending this stuff out, definitely let us know, because then we need to reach out to our mail house and other things to make sure that there wasn't some kind of issue with a batch or something that has gone out. Hopefully you've heard from people who are calling into our own customer service line that we've really kind of increased our response time. we've been putting a lot of different policies and practices in place to make sure that the longest people should be going without a call is about 24 hours. Maybe if it's immediately following a holiday or a time when the office was closed, it might be 36 hours. And we have brought back the membership cards, and we're trying to do things around kind of calling, automated emails, and so on. And there is a webinar online kind of related to these different membership things that if you or anyone on your membership committees is interested in, you can access fairly easily. And then going into 2016, we are going to be initiating an onboarding process, something so that when a new member comes on board, they'll have touch points kind of throughout the first 6 months of their membership to help get them engaged. And one of the things that I'll be working with the membership team on is to figure out how we can incorporate you all and your chapters into that to make sure that you're factored in to kind of that onboarding process. But then the other thing that is really important that we've really been kind of bringing up is prospects, and the fact that we really need at any chapter event that you're having, whether it's gathering business cards, making sure that non-members are signing in or doing something to capture their information and then get them in the database. We do have a process to make sure that we're reaching out to prospects or that we're letting them know about important research that is being done to really help them understand the value of ASID. And we're always in the process of kind of refreshing and updating our different, membership recruitment tools and brochures and so on. Hopefully a number of you participated on the Brand Central kind of walkthrough, because for those of you who've gone in there, you'll see that a number of these templates, including the postcards that you can order or that you can download a PDF to kind of print on your own, that includes some of our new imaging and graphics. That is all on there, and that is something that is available to you so that you don't have to always be recreating the wheel. But these are things that we're always doing to try and make sure that we're supporting you. Now, that ends the recorded part of the program. So